And that was a great cue because I was just about to say we're going to be recording the introductory part of this roundtable. We'll be recording all of the presentations as well. We won't record our two break. Could everybody mute? Thanks. We won't record our breakout room discussions, and we won't record our wrap-up conversation, so the final sort of ahas that everybody shares. But otherwise, we'll have a recording, and if you haven't had a chance to look at our Solutions Roundtable website page yet, you'll see there, this is like our fifth Rural Solutions Roundtable, and we've done roundtables on a variety of other topics, and we have the recordings up there, as well as we create a resource guide for each Solutions Roundtable. So that's what we will be using that recording for. Okay, so I'm Lori Higgins, and Michelle Archie is with Harbinger Consultancy. She is the lead organizer of this shindig, and has been on all of our Solutions Roundtables and does an amazing job. Thank you, thank you. Katie Leach, she is our Zoom keeper and is with the Western Rural Development Center. Eric Kingston, Amber Smyer may be popping in here and there, but she's on the road and had to take a different route than she was hoping, where she would have cell service, and so probably won't be much able to join us. But Angelica Reyes Perez, Eric, Amber, and Angelica also with Western Rural Development Center. And I'm really excited that this is the first joint effort between Western Community Assessment Network, or WeCAN, and the Western Rural Development Center. So we've had like just a great team working on putting all of this together. And also welcome to our small village of speakers, presenters, breakout room facilitators, resource folks, and you. A little just appreciate it if you keep your camera on as much as you can. Creates a sense of community. You will be muted in the main room, so if you want to talk, raise your hand during Q&A to speak, or you can always use the chat. We are we mine the chat after these Solutions Roundtables, and we include a lot of all your good ideas and references to other resources in our resource guide. So please feel free to pop anything you think is relevant, useful, and interesting into that chat. And then again, if you need assistance with anything, message Catherine Leach or Michelle Archie in the chat, and they will help you. Little bit of background on WeCAN and the WRDC. So WeCAN started in about 2018, and we came together basically to focus on redesigning and evaluating an intensive community assessment program in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming called the Community Review. But that kind of led into other things. For instance, the Peer Learning Network, which we started in 2020, and the Rural Solutions Roundtables came out of the Peer Learning Network efforts. And we also built a boot camp, which is a 4-week series of workshops on getting a placemaking project done in your community. We do research, we do develop resources for rural communities, a lot of leadership development and capacity building for the smallest towns. And the Western Rural Development Center, as I said, this is our first sort of joint effort, and they're co-hosting. And I'm excited to say that All the WeCAN programs that had started in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho are transitioning to the Western Rural Development Center. So will be available in all 13 states and the Pacific Basin territories in the Western Rural Development Center region. And the WRDC is one of 4 rural development centers in the United States. And the focus is really on linking rural communities with land grant universities and institutions. So really building those partnerships so that the resources of land grant universities can support rural communities and their development. Okay, here is where we find out who all is here, and I'm really excited about this. What we'd like you to do is type in the chat your name, community, or organization, and one question on your mind about accessible rural communities. And don't forget to say where you are, your community or your state, some indicator of where you are. I know we actually have someone from Spain here, so that's always an interesting part of this. Don't hit send on this until I tell you to. We're going to do it all at once so that people aren't distracted watching the chat instead of working on their own introduction. And we're going to give it a full, pretty much a minute so that everyone will have time. I know this is not as easy for some as others. So we're just going to give time for folks to do that. But again, don't hit send yet. And I'll tell you when. And so we'll just create this waterfall of introductions here in a second. And then afterwards, I'm going to read some of those so that folks who are screen reader users can also get a sense of who's here and some of the questions that folks have about accessible rural communities. So I'm going to be quiet for just a second and let folks finish with their introduction. Okay, everybody hit send. Woo! Oh my goodness. Okay. Let me scroll back up to the top and I'll read just a couple of them. Oh, we have Kayla Mosher from Thompson Falls, Montana, with the Kinixu Land Trust. Wonders, have other rural communities seen resistance or opposition to accessibility improvements? I can kind of guess that answer to that question is probably yes. Gail Holzer, a peer advocate with Summit in Missoula. Eric Kingston, housing and community access specialist with WRDC, who you're going to be hearing from in a minute, based out of Boise. Barb Dunham, destination management manager, travel Southern Oregon coast. What are some low cost, no cost ways for the rural communities to take advantage of accessible projects? And hopefully we're going to have some answers to that. Lori Pareca, our friend who is currently in Madrid, Spain, transitioning to a new organization, Cambio MO. Cambio MO, anyway. Glad you're here, Lori. Let's see, Sam DeRoche, WDNR Central Wisconsin. Where can we find resources for funding streams to create, improve, and maintain accessibility? Another great question we hope to provide some answers to. We also have someone from Arrowhead Regional Development Commission in Northeast Minnesota, Beverly Sidlow Tolliver. Would like to hear different perspectives of what accessible means depending on the context. Thank you for that. Let's see.
Can I toss in one? This is my favorite. Robin Zentner from Missoula is a peer with Summit Independent Living. I don't know what I don't know, so I'm here to learn.
Love that. Great. Let's see, lots of folks, Montana. Oh, we have someone from Topeka, Kansas. Kelly Mark with the Sunflower Foundation is interested in accessible trails in rural communities. Great, we're gonna focus a bit on that today too. Let's see, we have Amanda
One or two
Crump.
more, Lori.
Hmm?
Maybe just one or two more.
Let's end with Amanda Crump, professor at UC Davis. Is there a community of practice for those studying in international settings? That's a great question. I'd like to talk to you about that later. Thank you everyone so much for contributing to our introduction Chatterfall. Okay, how this is going to go today. We have a keynote speaker who will be introduced to you in just a moment, Jeremy Maxend. And then we'll have some breakout time to visit, to get to know each other. We'll do a short stretch break around 12:30 Pacific time. We will hear our solution stories from rural communities across the West, and then another short stretch break, which will be about 1:35 Pacific time. And then we'll have breakout rooms again, facilitated this time to explore ideas and approaches that most interest you. And then we'll come back and have a closing discussion and wrap up at 2:30 Pacific time. And throughout the roundtable, again, I mentioned this earlier, but please use the chat to share resources, insights, questions, stories. We will be sending out a resource guide for expanding access in rural communities. Hope to answer some of those questions y'all put in the Chatterfall about resources for making some of these things happen in your communities there. We do that after the roundtable is over so that we can incorporate some of the great ideas and resources that we're going to hear from all of you today. So please share those with us. After the keynote speaker asks questions in the chat or raise your hand to ask live, we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And please join in open conversations during the breakout rooms. From our past evaluations, people have said that has been a very rewarding part of the Solutions Roundtables. So I look forward to that. And then again, during our wrap-up discussion, we'll ask you to put things in the chat or raise your hand to add insights at that point. And I think I'm handing this over to Eric Kingston, who I need to give a shout out to, because I don't think we'd be doing this Solutions Roundtable if it wasn't for Eric. I've been working with Eric for years on various projects in Idaho, and he has been a staunch advocate for community accessibility pretty much as long as I've known him, which is a heck of a long time now, Eric. And so Eric's going to introduce our keynote speaker. And again, just kudos to Eric for, I think, really, making this happen. So thank you.
Thanks, Lori. I think we were both a lot younger when we first met. It sure seems like it anyway. And let's see. And on Helica, I just got word that our friend Carol is still having a hard time getting in. When she tries the link, it tells her she has to register, but she registered already. So anything you can do to help her is appreciated. So yeah, as Lori said, I'm Eric Kingston. Lori and I know each other from the Idaho Rural Partnerships Community Review Team that was active from about 2000 until 2017 or 18, and has been kind of improved and taken over by the WeCAN project, community assessment work. And then I'm gonna share my screen if that works for you guys. Let's see if I can just acknowledge that that's working.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Me.
And while
Okay,
you're
fantastic.
doing that, Eric, while you're
Yeah.
setting that up, someone said, asked if we could turn on closed captions. Someone said, yes, you individuals have to turn that on. So if you need to know how to do that, contact Katie Leach or Michelle.
So can somebody acknowledge that you can see that slide that I've got up?
It's up.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. So, there's just my contact information, and that's a photo of on the right side of our friend Jeremy Maxon, who's going to be with you shortly. We were both up in McCall, Idaho, helping with their sort of ADA transition plan a year or two ago. And so just kind of going around visiting that community. Let's see if I can. There we go. So why does access matter? This is a big question. Um, it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, how old you are, any of that kind of stuff. Disability happens. And so, the reality is about 70% of Americans will experience some kind of disability by the time we hit 65. And I'm past that. As we get older, that probability increases. People can adapt to a lot of different things, but when we have a built environment that creates barriers that are just like not surmountable, that's what creates a lot of the problems. So our kind of shared goal is to reduce those barriers where possible, where it comes to civic engagement or retail or travel. And this is another reality. A little reminder of from an ADA parking spot that this is a club that anybody can join without any warning. Um, so, rural is a little bit different when it comes to accessibility. Obviously, we've got, narrower tax bases. The infrastructure is not the same as it is in a larger metro area. Don't have the same access to services or resources that you might in a big city. And then poverty rates are also higher in rural communities of rural America. And also we have an older population in rural America. So those are things that kind of contribute to higher rates of disability in rural America versus urban settings. So some of the things, just really basic things that we like to talk about, when we do our outreach with the Idaho Access Project, and that is, presume competence when you're working with community members that have disabilities. If you, kind of reach out to them, get to know what life is like for them, get to know them on a level where you kind of understand barriers through their experiences. Make sure you think about mutual respect. And obviously, when we start to make those relationships and start caring about people, they may be family members or friends or colleagues. Then we start caring about, what happens to them and how much they can be part of life. The bottom line is, figure out how to start a conversation and make, if you're somebody who works for a local government or local agency, figure out how you can get more of those people to the table. As far as, the other aspects of this, I like to remind people that access means business. This brochure is from the Ramp Up Idaho project we started in Idaho in 2012, and we realized that barriers to access were also barriers to commerce. And you can see the graphs there show that people with disabilities have a lot of money to spend. But if they can't get in the door, you can't get their money if you're a retail business. And so be thinking about that as well. As far as travel and recreation goes, this is a shot from our trip we did up in North Idaho a couple of years ago. That is actually that manhole cover in front of our friend Jamie is the center of the universe, according to the people in Wallace. So we got to travel there and made it back. That just shows you the stats for travelers with disabilities. Those folks are investing approximately $50 billion a year through travel, recreation, and tourism. It's a significant thing, and they're not traveling alone, so that just counts their investment. Visitability, one of the biggest things that we can do in this country is change the way we design and build housing. to make that housing work for people as we age, work for people who have, a functional mobility disability that can't use stairs safely or at all. So that's a big thing we're going to talk about. And then I'm going to introduce Jeremy Maxand, another longtime friend. Lots of credentials here. He was a mayor of a town in Alaska a long time ago. He's on all kinds of boards, throughout Idaho. He's on the Idaho Access Project board. You've got a picture on the right in the top. That's Jeremy presenting. We were down in Denver presenting last spring. And then the photo below is at the 35th anniversary of the ADA in Boise last July with our good friend Kelly Buckland, who until recently was working with Pete Buttigieg on accessibility and transportation. And I guess all I'm going to say about Jeremy, he is like a cat with maybe started with 9 lives. He's got 7. I've been on some road trips with him, and only one of them involved EMTs. But I'm gonna turn it over to Jeremy now.
Wow, that is an introduction. Thanks, Eric.
You betcha.
Okay, I am going to share real quick, just do the tech work here and get my slides up. Let's see. Okay, how are we looking? Can you see the title slide? Okay, great.
Good.
All right, thanks for having me. This presentation, this keynote, is called Lessons from the Edge, and it might be totally appropriate based on Eric's description of me falling off things. How rural resilience shapes accessibility. All right. So good morning. And again, thank you for the chance to be a part of this roundtable and for the opportunity to talk about accessibility in rural America. Special thanks to Eric Kingston for connecting me with the Western Rural Development Center, and to Michelle, Archie, and team for getting me squared away to present to all of you. I also want to recognize my incredible colleagues and friends with the Idaho Access Project and the Idaho Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, who I see on here. I see Gary Haynes on here. I see Jason Wheeler from Utah on here, folks that I've had the pleasure of working with in some capacity. And you'll hear more from them later this afternoon. So when we talk about creating communities where everyone can thrive, we're really talking about what rural America does and already knows by heart, and that is how to be resilient. I grew up in Southeast Alaska in the town of Wrangell, a small island community you can only reach by boat or plane. Here's a great photo from Muir Mountain overlooking downtown Wrangell. This is the Inside Passage. We were just north of Ketchikan, south of Petersburg, if you know where those communities are. And this was a mountain that John Muir wrote about in some of his musings, and it's called Muir Mountain. We actually called it Snob Hill because a lot of rich people lived on this hill when I was growing up in this town. But we'll call it Muir Mountain. The winters were long, as you can imagine. The supplies came in by barge or plane. And if something broke, you fixed it yourself or found someone who could. I've had more than one wheelchair part repaired by a marine welder in a boatyard on some random afternoon in the middle of a high school. And that's really where I first learned what resilience means. It's not a buzzword, but it's really a way of life. When I became a wheelchair user at 15 from what's called transverse myelitis, and you can look that up, I realized something surprising, and that was that my rural upbringing had already really prepared me for my disability. I already knew how to adapt. I knew how to solve problems with limited resources, and I really had to learn how to rely even more on my community. And in a lot of ways, being rural had made me resilient long before disability ever really entered the picture. And that's the heart of what I wanted to briefly talk about today, how rural resilience and accessibility aren't separate ideas. They're really two sides of the same coin. And this is a photo of a number of adults and kids in a rural setting in a field with mountains in the backdrop, and one of the gentlemen is sitting in a manual wheelchair out in the field. So rural communities have always been models of resilience. You deal with what's in front of you, wildfires, floods, power outages, long distance. You rely on your neighbors, your faith, your ingenuity, and you make things work. That's also the foundation of accessibility. Accessibility isn't just about ramps or regulations. It's about making sure that everyone can participate, contribute, and belong. And if you think about it, rural life depends on.
Y después otra vez.
Nope. There we go. So if you think about it, rural life really already depends on accessibility principles. We have roads that connect people across long distances. Information has to reach everyone, even without broadband in many communities. Homes have to work for every stage of life, from raising kids to caring for our elders. Those are acts of accessibility. They're acts of community care. Rural life already depends on the same principles that drive accessibility. And those are adaptability, connection, and inclusion. This slide has got a photo of a gentleman who is actually the father of a classmate of mine, Jeff Pettigrew, and his dad was an amputee and a fisherman. And so I would see him growing up as a young kid, working on his boat from a wheelchair, going down to the dock, getting on his fishing boat, and he would go out and gill net and seine and do all sorts of things, even missing a leg. So we had all kinds of folks like this running around our community when I was growing up. And there's a misconception that accessibility is just about a few people, but every rural person I feel like I've known has at some point experienced disability in some form, like a back injury, a surgery, aging parents, a veteran neighbor. Disability isn't rare, as Eric talked about. It's part really of the human story. And rural America, more than anywhere, knows how to respond to that story. When someone's barn roof collapses, the community shows up. When a neighbor needs a ramp or a ride, you don't wait for a grant. You grab a hammer and start your truck. That's accessibility like in action. It's community-based, it's peer-led, it's practical. It's what we already do. And disability doesn't make rural communities weaker. It reveals how strong they already are. It reminds us that resilience isn't only about enduring hardship, it's ensuring no one faces hardship alone. We're going to see this work manifested today in places like Lincoln City, Oregon, in Jemez, Pueblo, New Mexico, through accessible parks and trails, ensuring everyone can participate as equals. I'm super excited to hear about those projects. Let's see. And this next slide is a photo of kind of a rural forested road with a sign that says deaf person area. So what's powerful about rural communities is that innovation doesn't start with, funding or formal plans. It starts with values. When people care about one another, creativity follows. When we take the resilience that's already part of rural life and we aim it towards accessibility, like something shifts and we start seeing inclusion not as an extra feature, but as a core measure of community health. And it shows up in little decisions that add up to really big things, like when a town meeting moves from the upstairs room to the ground floor so everyone can attend, or when a trail crew adds a resting bench because they know neighbors of all ages use that path, or when a new project starts with the question, who might we be leaving out instead of how do we meet code? That's not compliance, that's leadership. Rural innovation has always been about using what you have, finding what works and making it better. Accessibility fits that pattern perfectly. It's problem solving with empathy. It's looking at your community through a wider lens and realizing that access is opportunity, or at the Idaho Access Project, access is business, access is freedom, right? And when we approach access this way, we move from accommodation to inclusion, from helping people get by to designing systems where everyone can truly thrive. Accessibility is not a checklist, it's a culture. It's a culture that says every person has something to contribute. It says every design choice carries an invitation, and every act of inclusion strengthens who we are together. And here's what's remarkable about that. Rural communities are especially suited to lead this work. You know, we're big cities, and I live in a big city, and relatively in Idaho, a big city. You know, we rely on bureaucracy, where small towns really rely on relationships. You know, when people know each other, accessibility becomes really personal. And we see that in rural communities. You're not just installing a ramp, you're making sure your neighbor can get through the door. You're not just adding captions, you're making sure your friend can join the conversation. And you're not just improving broadband, you're connecting a veteran to healthcare or a student to learning. Seen that way, accessibility stops being a technical issue and becomes a human one. It becomes the next expression of the rural spirit. It's our way of saying, you know, we take care of each other here. Now, mind you, rural communities are not perfect. I grew up in a rural community. I'm intimately aware of what it means to be one giant family and how families can often treat one another. But, you know, that's when accessibility becomes resilience in its truest form. It's a reflection of how we sustain one another when resources are thin and when challenges are big, and when creativity is really, you know, our greatest asset. So the question isn't whether rural communities can be accessible. The question is, how much stronger will we be when we make accessibility part of everything we already do? And this is a slide of actually a gentleman named Mike Hansen who hiked, he's blind, and he hiked the Appalachian Trail. And this is him kind of out there crossing a bridge. Now, here's something that I've learned after working in both rural and urban settings. Rural communities actually have an advantage when it comes to inclusion. Why? Because you already know how to work together. You already make decisions close to home. You don't need endless committees or consultants to get started. You just need a shared sense of purpose and a good neighbor with a toolbox. And when a small town decides to make its parks, trails, or civic meetings accessible, it doesn't take a federal mandate, although sometimes they help. It takes one conversation at the coffee shop, one church group that cares, or one mayor who sees the big picture. I'm not saying I was that mayor. There are a lot of things going on, but sometimes I tried. Accessibility done the rural way is fast, it's practical, and again, it's deeply personal, and that's something to really be proud of. Rural America doesn't have to copy anyone else's model. You can lead with your own. This next slide is a photo of a gentleman with an adaptive lift assist making his way onto a tractor in a field. And here's the opportunity before us. So across the country, every rural community is asking the same questions. How do we keep our young people, right? How do we support our elders? And how do we build places that last? Accessibility is part of the answer to all of those questions. With aging populations, they need to stay home. They need homes they can stay in, homes built with visitability and universal design in mind. Workforce gaps can be filled when we invest in accessible transportation and technology that allows people with disabilities to participate fully. And economic growth comes when communities invite all kinds of visitors and residents to explore, shop, and stay. All things that Eric mentioned, and all things that many of us in Idaho have been working on for a long time. Accessible design isn't charity, it's a strategy. It's the blueprint for keeping rural communities strong. Okay, this next slide has got a photo of, this is a way back. I pulled this out today. It's a photo of 3 young people, my best friend Stu, and then our 2 girlfriends. This is probably 1990, 91. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But when I think back to my hometown in Alaska, a place that taught me independence and interdependence, I realized that I realized what accessibility is truly about. It's not just me getting into the building, it's about what happens after I do. It's the conversation, the connection, and the shared purpose. That's what rural life has always offered: belonging. Accessibility simply ensures that belonging keeps expanding. So again, this photo in the slide was taken maybe 1990 or 1991 at an accessible campsite on Wrangell Island. It shows my best friend Stu and our girlfriends at the time. And this was the first truly accessible campsite on our island. It was built right after the ADA passed. And I remember how excited the Forest Service employees were who were building the trail. The parking area off this logging road had a pretty long gravel trail that had to be graded through the muskeg down to a creek and to a campsite. And they were super excited about building this trail. They asked me to come by. You know, they knew me. It was a small town. They knew I used a wheelchair, obviously. And they asked me to come by the Forest Service shop and see what they were up to. And as soon as that campground went in, my friends and I were on the logging roads, headed out to live our best lives. I can still remember how cool that was, the excitement of the employees and being able to really go camping and not focus on, you know, how I was going to get around. I could just hang out and enjoy everything with my friends. That was so cool. So as you know, we begin today's discussion, sharing examples and ideas, I hope we hold on to this truth. You know, we don't build accessible communities for people with disabilities. We build them with people with disabilities for everyone. Because, you know, resilience isn't measured by how well we stand alone. It's measured by how strong we are together. Accessibility is how rural resilience shows up in the built environment. It's how small towns make our strengths visible. So again, thanks for the opportunity to share like my perspective as someone with rural roots, as someone with a disability, as somebody working with others to address rural challenges. And I look forward to collaborating with you this afternoon around this incredibly important topic. And the last slide is just a question slide, but it's 2 photos, one of me, I think when I was probably like 7 or 8, it's like at a shooting range with a little rifle. I didn't include the picture of me with a MAC-10 machine gun because I thought that might not be appropriate. And then another slide of me kind of older when I went back to Wrangell in a chair, kind of popping a wheelie, going down a super steep ramp because the tides in Alaska are just wildly variable. And we were headed down to a float plane dock to go out and do some kayaking, which I love to do up there. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much again. And I've got a few minutes, I think, for questions if anyone has them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Super presentation. Really great way to, I think, set the stage for the solution stories that we're going to be hearing in a little while from rural communities across the West. Does anybody have a question? Either raise your hand or you can put the question in the chat, whatever works for you. Any questions or thoughts? Anything that this made you think about?
Easy.
You stumped him, Jeremy. I always have a million questions, but don't make me ask mine. Ask yours. Let's see. Okay, Barb says in the chat, would love for you to connect rural resilience and accessibility to climate resilience, if you have thoughts on that.
Rural resilience and accessibility to climate resilience, if you have thoughts on that. You know, to be honest, I think whether it's a climate imposed disaster or it's any other kind of disaster, and I think about the disasters right now, climate related, impacting villages in Alaska that are having to relocate and have had a lot of their infrastructure destroyed, and they're having to leave places they've traditionally been at for who knows how long, right? People with disabilities always are impacted the most when that happens, whether it's the campfire in Paradise, or the Harvey Katrina in Texas, or the Hurricane Harvey in Texas, or the Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Across the board, what you see, and I think the most direct impact, is that folks with disabilities die, they disappear, they lose their ability to be independent, they end up in nursing facilities. Horrible things happen to people with disabilities when faced with dealing with disasters and emergencies. And I think there is a really powerful intersection between the impacts of climate change, whether it be wildfires, rising tides, ocean levels, things like that, or even the air quality impacts from wildfires that we've seen over the last several years. I just think it's important to recognize that if you're a person with a disability, you are going to be significantly more impacted by those disasters, and we've got to get a handle on how to better prepare our communities to be resilient, and to prepare our systems, especially transportation, to meet the need when those disasters happen. So I would immediately go there when I think about climate resiliency in communities, rural communities in particular.
Let's do one more question, and then we can go to breakout rooms. And maybe this is two questions that are a similar question. So Lauren asked, would love to talk about peer support or people with disabilities creating allies in rural areas related to accessibility and representation. And then Taylor asked, how can you get rural professionals more interested in learning about accessibility and implementing solutions than seeing it as a niche topic? Taylor teaches workshops to business owners and wants to figure out more connections in that way. There might be a same question in there.
Yeah, so to Taylor's question, both are great, Lauren and Taylor. I think what we have found and what we've tried to do with the Idaho Access Project, and not to jump in front of my colleagues who are going to talk about that, but I think people are always so uncomfortable with disability if they haven't been around it, or concerned about doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. And I think we've tried to do a really great job creating, kind of a safe space, if you will, for people to feel comfortable just being exposed to folks with disabilities and the challenges that we face every day. And we try and show up in those communities whenever we can, particularly rural communities, and establish, first and foremost, friendships, right? And that direct peer-to-peer connection with people, and to be positive and constructive, and to not come at things from the angle of like, well, you need to, yeah, we know what everybody needs to do, but you get more, honey is better, I guess. What's that saying? So I think showing up in rural communities, and I think understanding where rural communities are at, what resource limitations they have, and the fact if they're asking for support or help, like that is 90%, right? 90% there. And the rest is the work that you have to do to get the rest of the 10%, but more flies with honey than with vinegar. Yeah. So that's what we've done, is try to really be forward facing, building positive, constructive relationships, and making people feel comfortable as they become more comfortable addressing issues of accessibility and stuff. And I think it's been really positive and really constructive in the state of Idaho, the work that we've been doing there. So I don't know if that helps or not, but the second question about peer support, in rural areas. Yeah, I think again, we're talking about intersections, right? So there's this intersection of like the digital divide and having access to broadband, for example, making connections with people who have really serious transportation challenges, and then figuring out how to amplify those connections that you make potentially virtually by getting into those folks' communities physically to engage one-on-one or with groups. That takes a lot of resources and time. It takes money in a state like Idaho. It's wild how long it takes to get from point A to point B. Just in our service area as a Center for Independent Living. So you got to invest in it, and you have to be strategic about how you do it. And you have to use, I think, multiple formats, multiple mediums to get it done.
In rural communities across the West. So these solution stories are 6 different stories, again, about 5 to 7 minutes each. And my role, and just apologies in advance, is to try to keep everything on time. So as we come up on 5 minutes in each presentation, I'm just going to probably interrupt and say, you've got a couple minutes left. So no, that's not a personal thing. That's just me doing my job. So our first presenter is Kendra Lewis with the Cutting Fences Foundation in Montana. And Kendra, I'm just going to let you have at it.
Sounds great. Are you able to hear me okay?
You sound great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me today. And thank you all for your commitment to your rural communities. As she mentioned, I'll be talking about Cutting Fences Foundation, and specifically our loan closet. So we are a Montana nonprofit that serves farmers, ranchers, and veterans in agriculture who are living with a disability or illness, really with the hopes of restoring function, independence, and quality of life. And we have a few different programs and ways that we do this, but our core program really has become our loan closet, which is an agricultural specific or rural life specific adaptive equipment loan closet, where Montanans have access to the equipment that you see on the screen, as well as some other pieces to loan for free for extended periods of time. We primarily serve farmers, ranchers, and veterans. However, if there's a Montanan that can benefit from our programs or the use of our equipment, we never turn anyone away. Most of our equipment loans are 3 months plus. We are really, case by case, client by client, specific in the work that we do. In that if somebody needed it for 6 months for calving or whatever that might be, we really try to just be as flexible as we can. And then if somebody doesn't want the piece of adaptive equipment behind them, we just allow them to keep it and keep using it until somebody does, because we'd rather they use it than it sit in a storage unit or in a trailer. We want it used. So we currently have in our loan closet 3 track standers, 2 terrain hoppers, a Freedom Tracks, a coach lift, and then we'll be getting a Outrider Coyote in February, which is a pretty big leap. We started in 2023 with just 1 track chair, so we'll start the year of 2026 with 8 pieces of equipment now. Why we do what we do really kind of started back when I was in OT school. So I'm the founder of Cutting Fences Foundation, and I just happened to come across 3 farmers and ranchers who are doing their life from the seat of a power wheelchair, and got to thinking while I was in OT school, wow, that's a bigger population than I would have expected, that lives without a lot of lifestyle specific resources in the state of Montana. So what started as a podcast to just kind of get a grasp on some of their needs and what really helped them to fill those needs in Montana, turned into the foundation and into the loan closet after that. And really my thoughts while I was in OT school and started digging into this idea is, if I didn't do this work, who would? And Jeremy's talk really hit home for me, because I grew up in a town of 200. I grew up in agriculture, and it's 100% true that, we'll figure out a way to help our neighbors. And so being able to give back to the community that raised me is really, really special to me. So being a nonprofit has been a really important piece of this puzzle. As Jeremy mentioned, you know, it doesn't always start with funding. Sometimes it just starts with our values. And so being a nonprofit gives us the ability to do whatever we need to do to help the people in the ways that they need support. Some of our partners, we have many, we do not do this alone. That's one of our strengths, is we've done a lot of networking, but Montech is one of our community partners. They are state assistive technology program. They've been loaning assistive technology out to Montanans for over 30 years. So their mentorship in this world means a lot to us, as well as their outreach within the Montana communities. They have our equipment on their website in their loan closet as well, so it helps us have a larger reach to help more people with our adaptive equipment. We also partner with the Farmer Veteran Coalition, and that's really for our veteran-specific programs. We partner with them for a program called Hive, where we help host seminars that help veterans transition from service into the agricultural sector, and how that can be really beneficial for those folks, as well as us all. We just recently started partnering with a few extension agencies throughout Montana, two of which we've got partnerships with, one on the east side of the state and one on the west. And what that partnership looks like is that they have agreed to house our track chairs when they're not being used, to make pickup and delivery a lot easier, as Montana is a very large state. And then the last three that you see on the screen are really funding support in their partnership. So Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has funded our terrain hopper and really helped us get more of that hunting piece, hunting and fishing off the ground, because our equipment's great on the farmer ranch, but it's also great for just outdoor rec and leisure as well. And then the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation were really the driving force that got us off the ground. They took a chance on us when we were a new organization and funded our first track chair that really just opened the door to everything that we're doing today.
You have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, awesome. And then we have many different funders. We really have leaned into grassroots funders as far as sponsors and smaller grants. That's kind of our bread and butter. We aren't federally funded by a large grant. And then talking about how other communities can do this, I think just finding a need and just grinding each day to try and find a way to do it, just like the rural resilience that we've heard about several times in today's presentation. As far as how we benefit the community, I'll go through this quickly, but really just access. The nice thing about our adaptive equipment is that it allows people to go where everyone else can go. So it's not just one specific trail or one specific area. They can pretty much get where everyone else can get. It spreads awareness on what exists as far as adaptive equipment, helps them save money maybe on something that isn't a fit that they didn't get to try out before they purchased, but we also try and help find them funding as well, and then just makes things possible again. As far as lessons learned, I liked this picture for this slide because it feels like work in the nonprofit world can be a little bit of a roller coaster and a carnival ride. But just again, one of the lessons I've learned is just trying to really stay rooted in my rural roots and in those values, and just stay behind the mission of helping others to do what they need and want to do. So hopefully we'll go over.
No, you didn't. That was amazing. And of course, all of us want to talk to you for half an hour. This will be the same for every one of the solution stories, but thank you, Kendra. And just a reminder that all of our presenters are going to be in various breakout rooms after the solution stories, so you can dive in deeper. Thanks so much for kicking us off. All right, Eric, and there's my timer. Eric Luvas and Olivia Lebenz, you're up.
Okay.
There
Well,
you
thank you
go.
so much for having us. So my name is Eric Luvas. I'm a director of interdisciplinary training at the Center on Disabilities and Human Development here at University of Idaho. And let Olivia introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Olivia Lebenz, and I'm the interdisciplinary training coordinator here at the University of Idaho Center on Disabilities and Human Development.
So we're here to talk to you about one of our projects that has developed out of our interdisciplinary training program. And real quickly, what that is we're a University Center of Excellence on Developmental Disabilities. And so we are mandated to exist in every state by the Developmental Disability Bill of Rights Act. So we are Idaho's Center on Disabilities. And we have many goals, but one of our main goals is pre-service preparation. And that includes bringing students from across different majors to the center and giving them training and education so they can better serve people with disabilities in whatever future profession they go into. And one of the ways that we do that is by helping students develop leadership skills. Artability is a project where people in our communities are provided structured arts workshops so they can learn a new art skill, so they can creatively express themselves, and they can be part of our community. And our student trainees pretty much support this project entirely, and we have a student trainee coordinator for the Artability project every year. Essentially what Artability is a series of arts workshops. So we have 3 to 4 in the fall semester, 3 to 4 in the spring semester, and we hire professional artists. Oh, you can go back one, Olivia, sorry. I'm not looking at the slides yet, I'm just talking. We hire professional artists so that students have the chance to, or people with disabilities in our community have a chance to learn from people who really know what they're talking about and learn about different mediums of art. And we do it in a variety of places in our community that Olivia will talk about in a moment. But just briefly, it's really meaningful to people in our community, as you'll see in some future slides, to have that community engagement opportunity to work with students who are excited about the project, and also to provide them opportunities for empowerment. It also really benefits our students because it's one of the few opportunities they have to have direct contact with people with disabilities in a community-based naturalistic setting. So it's really experiential education for them and preparing them for serving people with a variety of different abilities in their future. All right, I'm going to pass the baton to Olivia for the next slide.
So thank you, Eric. We identify a student to be a coordinator for this project, and that student then, of course, collaborates across the community and across different sectors of the community to recruit other University of Idaho students to be natural supports, to find funding and mediums for art, to contract with local professional artists, and to, of course, invite people to our workshops. We do provide a training to the broad university campus called Disability Etiquette, or Disability Let's Talk About It, to kind of break down those myths about disability, to bring to the fact that the disability is a natural part of being human. And we have a colleague of ours with a lived experience that provides this training to the wider community of campus. And then we advertise. We work with DD agencies, our Disability Action Center, which is our Independent Living Council's branch here in Moscow, to get the word out to people that there is a free workshop. You'll notice on these flyers that there's not a location on these workshops. We do that intentionally because we want people to register. We want people to register so we have the right amount of natural supports, the right amount of materials for the workshops, and that our workshop space is going to be appropriate and barrier-free. I want people to think outside the box. These workshops do not have to be indoors. They could be outside in parks. This is a workshop in the city and Friendship Square in the middle of Moscow, where we were doing cityscape photography. We've done painting workshops in parks. And of course, the day of the workshop, this is a workshop that's being taken place inside of a local middle school in a multi-purpose room. You can see we have space for people to move. We have appropriate number of people sitting at tables. We have supplies, and we have lots of natural supports to participate alongside the artists. We invite the community. We start early. 3 months before, we want to showcase all the art that we create over the course of an academic year. We start sending out invitations that are bright and colorful and clearly state the time and place of the showcase. We also, I just want to bring to your attention this little QR code in the middle of this page. We have developed a digital showcase. We recognize, thank you, COVID, that not all people can come to a location to view the artwork at the end of the academic year. So we have actually leveraged our number of participations because we've created a digital showcase.
About 2 minutes.
Thank you. We prepare the art to show to the showcase, to show to the community. We jury it, we frame it, we prepare it for display. We take a lot of time to strategically create a gallery. And this is the floor plan of a gallery. The showcase itself is the art gallery for the event. It's a 2-hour event, but it takes about 6 hours to set this up. We have anywhere from 100 to 150 pieces of artwork to display. We want to make sure there's appropriate amount of space for people to move. And then you can see how that comes into fruition, because here it is in real life. The art gallery all set up for the 2-hour showcase that we open up to the community. The artwork is up to the participant that created the art. They can sell their artwork for their own profit, which we have had great success selling artwork. The money goes directly to the artist. The university doesn't touch the money. This way, the artist or the participant that creates this art, they can either find a new way to leverage their own money, make their own money, or just feel the empowerment of making something that someone else wanted and paid for it. I'm going to hand it back to Eric to talk about lessons learned.
Yeah, so we're in our 12th year now of the Artability project. And in the 10th year, we did a little fun research endeavor with Dr. Lori Higgins called Ripple Effects Mapping. And essentially what we did is we asked community members at the showcase that year what the impacts were of Artability project over the last 10 years. And what happens with Lori's skill set with Ripple Effects Mapping is that we get a handwritten map and then a digitized map of all of the different impacts. So the little ripples of impact on people's lives. And so I'll just point a couple out. So artists talked about selling their art and the realized benefit of that like they could go, someone said, I got my toenails done. Someone said, having a chance to sell the art helped them feel like they're part of the community. We see family members talking about how Artability makes them feel like their family is part of a community when they have a child with a disability. That Artabilities open the door to different abilities to contribute to art, which is an important piece of Moscow culture, because Moscow's slogan is the heart of the arts. Instructors, the professionals we hire, talk about feeling pride when they see the artists and display of their arts, and that they learn as much from the participant artists as artists learn from them. And students also talk about, through art, they've learned how to make education more accessible. So a perspective change. We get a lot of students that are elementary and secondary education majors, and through this project have learned how to make things more accessible in their future classrooms. So there's been lots of different fun ripples to see what this program has done for the community. And I think Olivia is going to wrap us up.
Sure. I just want to take this model and think about how you can, in your own community, both rural and a metropolitan area, can recreate this model. It doesn't necessarily have to be art. It could be robotics, cooking, gardening, sewing, and then also thinking outside the box. It doesn't have to be a big art showcase. You could participate in a county fair, showcase whatever you create in a county fair. You could utilize senior citizen centers. I think this is where the imagination comes into play, and I think we all have something that we want to share, and we could all participate together.
Great. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Olivia. And again, another half-an-hour session that we've just had the seeds for. But thank you. And Eric, I know you've got to jet out, and thanks for joining us. But Olivia and I think one of your trainees will be here for the breakout rooms. So thank you again. All right, Jean Sprague from Lincoln City, Oregon is next, talking about the Schooner Creek Discovery Park.
That is correct. I'm going to get it started here. Can you all see the slide?
Looks good.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle and Eric. I'm Jeannie Sprague. I'm the director at Lincoln City Parks and Recreation out here on the Oregon coast. I have a few colleagues with me today on the call. We are thrilled to be reaching out to people in Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon to talk about what we've learned from and how we're growing and how we can work together. So this is about inclusion and accessibility in public spaces. So we are building the first park in Lincoln City in over 20 years per public input. It is called Schooner Creek Discovery Park, and that is the full design. It's $11 million park, 7 acres. We did start, we're in 3 phases. This is the first phase right here. It's the first inclusive and accessible public playground on the Oregon coast. And we are very proud of that fact, but we also are proud that it's just gotten us to have more conversations with public entities and private to be able to offer these kinds of services to the public. So why are we doing this and who benefits? So parks are for everyone. I know everyone thinks that or agrees with that that's on this call, but we truly believe in Lincoln City on the Oregon coast that everyone, it's a world vision that everyone can experience the life-changing and life-saving benefits of parks and recreation. To do that, Jeremy and Eric have already gone into this a little bit. It's simply a shift in perspective. I like that Jeremy said it's innovation starts with values. It starts with the person. Taylor here in one of my breakout groups says it's not a niche topic. How I heard this and it really changed my mindset is I was at an Oregon Coast Visitors Association training workshop about accessible amenities in parks and public spaces, and the disability advocate said this to us is stop looking at inclusive design or accessible design as an added amenity, as an added budgetary expense. It's not. It's simply a worldview of humanity as a whole deserves to be able to access your public spaces and utilize them. So that just got me focusing on this from here on out, that's what we do. Eric already went into this a little bit, so I don't need to go into this in detail, but basically the disabled community doesn't exist in isolation. When you attract one accessible recreator, you attract their family, their friends, so many people. So Eric brought up too that barriers to access is barriers to commerce, and that you attract more people with honey than vinegar, which I totally agree with that. So our accessible playground is universal design, which means we try to include everyone possible and all ages. And I'll get to that in just a second, but playgrounds are not just for youth. That is an outdated perspective, which I will get to in a second. But basically, these are just some of the amenities we've included: communication board, calming areas, a sensory zone. This is one of the favorite ones from our public, which is an inclusive carousel. It's ground level, so it's easily accessible for anyone to get up onto that carousel and then swing around until you feel like you may vomit, but people love it. Then we also have the Play Hill and Dignity slide. This is a really cool new amenity where it has an accessible path that leads up to the slide. And then at the bottom of the slide is called a Dignity slide because a person can move over on the slide while other adults and children are going down the slide, and they're not in the way while they take their time getting up off of this slide. I love that aspect. There's also play spheres for sensory exploration. Swings, we have 4 different types that accommodate differing abilities. We also have number 4, the log tangle climber, of all different various levels of access on the structure. And then the climbing rocks, we have varying heights where you can both anchor if you need to or not anchor. So what we try to do is have independent play for anyone that walks into our public space, that they can participate in activities that anyone can participate independently, or they can go there and socialize should they want to with others. We are all about aging in place and intergenerational inclusion. And I'm really hoping we start a movement, although I've talked to many other Parks and Rec colleagues that agree with this, that playgrounds are no longer just for youth. They're definitely for youth. We want them for youth, but I can promise you that parents, grandparents, adults they don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore, and they never did. They always wanted to be in there playing. Everyone wants to play and having a great time. And this is Jerry, who is 89 years old and came to my office actually to tell me how excited she was to be on the playground and feeling welcomed on a playground for the first time in decades.
Amazing. 2 minutes, Jean.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a few others, new amenities that we talked about, that we have learned about, that I really want to put out to this group because they are so important to include in universal design or any public facility. So basically, when a public building is missing a universal washroom with a universal changing table, which this is what that is, the people, and by extension, their family and friends who need it, must make alternative plans. That often means not going to your public facility, not going out, and not participating in all that life has to offer. So we are now including universal changing tables in all of our public restrooms. And I can tell you, one of the first things I hear from people when they come in to utilize our restrooms is, do you have a universal changing table? So that's very important. So is hearing loops. If you haven't heard what these are, I'm not going to take time to explain it, but Google it. These are fantastic, and we're using them in our park and within public buildings too. We're also using audio format signage, which helps people that are vision impaired to be able to get around our new park. We do have the world's shortest park trail. Google it. We really do. You all should come out and hike it sometime. It's 135 feet long. But we are doing audio format for that. So how did we get to be inclusive and accessible? It's because the public told us that. We have an advisory board for my Parks and Rec department. They gave input every step of the way. They helped with our capital campaign, raising money. We also have a Friends nonprofit group that helps raise funds. And I can tell you without a doubt that I'm going to just go to the next slide really quick, that we raised this many funds, 3.6 million alternative funding out of 11 million, because people wanted to support an inclusive and accessible park. I believe if we did not have that kind of vision moving forward, we would have not received all this alternative funding. People support this. So please remember that when you're looking at budgets and that sort of thing. Oh, by the way, really quick, universal changing tables hardly cost anything. They're $10,000. So implement them in your public facilities. So how can other communities, especially rural, start looking at inclusive and accessible design? Is connect with other communities. That's what we did. We learned about universal design. We were not experts. We took trainings in all of this. We invited the disabled community to our space. We had open houses specifically for them. And then when they came to us with ideas, we were open-minded. We didn't shut down and say, we can't budget for that, or that's not going to fit in our building. And the overall community benefit is just a park where everyone finds their favorite spot. So lessons learned, basically, is you do not need to be an expert to make a difference. So we are not experts. We give ourselves time, but thank you, Michelle and Eric, for letting us share what we're doing out here on the coast.
Jean, thank you. I did see something in the chat about a field trip, and I know that Eric has already threatened a field trip. So, just be prepared for a bit of accessible community tourism to come out of this. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Jason Wheeler, Assist Utah is next.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you today.
All right.
Okay, my screen visible?
Yep, all systems go.
Great. So I'm going to be talking about accessibility at Latitude. This specific coordinates are for Torrey, Utah. We are a 501c3 architecture firm that was established in 1969 with the mission to elevate communities by design. And we do work both in urban and rural areas throughout the state of Utah and a little bit in adjacent states. This is just a sample of some of our recent body of work that includes like a 24/7 daycare center, clinic spaces for the Utah AIDS Foundation, a community kitchen for persons that are experiencing homelessness, permanent supportive housing for persons with mental and emotional challenges, and a little sewer filtration building, actually randomly, which is not normally what we do, but I like food a lot, especially Latino, kind of Latin American food. These are some chilaquiles that my sister and brother-in-law made. And for a while before coming to Utah, I was working in rural Iowa, a little town called Red Oak, and a small branch office of a larger architecture firm. And we would regularly go to the best restaurant in town, which was Casa de Oro, and get some incredible food. And my coworker's dad, while I was working there, was an electrician by trade and kind of a hobby farmer, and had mostly retired from the electrical business, but was still doing his farming. And one day was accidentally launched about 60 feet from a bucket truck that he had, and ended up being paralyzed from the waist down. But thanks to many adaptive technologies, he was actually, or is actually, able to continue doing a lot of the things that he loves, including farming and golfing. But Casa de Oro, that little restaurant, didn't have a curb cut, and that because of that, there was a 6-inch curb that got in the way of him being able to enjoy the best restaurant in town. This was just supposed to be a filler slide. I was going to make a little illustration for this, but ran out of time. But the idea is that no burrito means sad face, and kind of something that was realized out of this is that the built environment can create barriers, and I think that this can be true in urban areas, and particularly true in rural areas. And so not too long after starting here, our organization, which has been doing accessibility retrofits for single-family homeowners, persons with disabilities, and people that are aging throughout Salt Lake City for decades, really, we were contacted by the Entrada Institute in Torrey, which is in kind of central Utah, just outside of Capitol Reef National Park. And they had a performing arts stage outdoors, and many of their performers were actually getting older and were having a harder time getting up on the stage. And so they asked us to come help build a ramp for them. So we designed and built this ramp as part of a community build project. And here, one of our coworkers, Heather, actually uses a chair herself, but was able to come down and help us put this ramp together. And that kind of has grown into a variety of other projects for this specific organization in rural Utah. They had purchased an adjacent property that had an existing house on it, but there was no accessibility to this house. The desire here was to have it be kind of an Airbnb type rental space for performers and artists that were coming down. And so the goal was to figure out how can we kind of add to the function of this house and provide accessibility. So we worked on putting together a master plan for them. And that included the house with an indoor performance venue that was added, as well as outdoor stage and an observatory, all with the goal of accessibility in mind. We were able to take advantage of kind of natural slope on the site. So you can see up on the right-hand side of the site here, this is under construction currently. As the site slopes to the north, this large deck that we're showing, you'll actually be able to enter at grade from the north side. So there won't even be any ramps. We'll just be able to make it kind of have this universal design approach that that anybody will be able to get into and out of. And so this idea of the built environment getting in the way of our ability to enjoy the world around us becomes particularly apparent in a town like Torrey, where it's a dark sky town and we can see the stars at night very beautifully. This is a photo I took last December in Salt Lake City. I think there was one star that was visible in the moon. In this case, the built environment is getting in the way of urban dwellers' ability to see the natural world, to see the stars. And so, you compare that to being in the Uintas and looking up at the night sky and being able to see the Milky Way. Like I said, I like food, but part of the conversation with the Entrada Institute was about designing this observatory that would provide access to the stars in rural Utah, but also would be accessible to people with disabilities. And so we kind of use this theme of the spiral galaxy, as well as some Native American themes with circular design in different directions, to come up with an observatory that followed this kind of circular pattern that would have both indoor and outdoor telescopes that could be wheeled out so that persons that are using wheelchairs would be able to have, very similar access to those that are inside. Inside, we do have an elevated platform that somebody using a wheelchair would not be able to access, but there will be this large telescope will be connected to some projecting televisions that anybody that's down on the lower level will be able to simultaneously see what's happening through that larger telescope. And then again, we're able to wheel out a whole series of smaller telescopes that can be used and viewed on site. So this was this little kind of accessible observatory that we put together. And I think all of these small lessons on this little project for this one organization have taught us that, yes, the built environment can create barriers, but the way that we approach design and architecture, both in urban and rural areas, can also eliminate barriers. It can create access, not just to physical spaces, but it enables our ability as individuals to enjoy the built environment that's all around us, as well as the natural environment that's around us. So yeah, that's just a little piece of the work that we're doing right now. And this is our crew. When we're not designing, we like to swing hammers. So that's it.
That's great. Thank you, Jason. Love it. And I've seen more than one comment in the chat that you made people hungry. So I guess that's the desired outcome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Okay, Keeman Greyhorse from Jemez Pueblo. Looks good, but if
Can
you're
you
talking,
see me and hear me?
yep, we can hear you.
And can you see the presentation?
Yep, all ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keeman Greyhorse. I am the office manager for the Pueblo of Jemez Department of Transportation. I will be speaking about building access and community with our HEMISH Path to Wellness project and a couple of our pet safety projects that have improved accessibility in our community. So Jemez is located in north central New Mexico, about 50 miles northwest of Albuquerque, with a population of about 3,900 and growing. And so this image here shows the Pueblo boundary in yellow, and the blue line that bisects is the New Mexico Highway 4 or NM4, which was originally constructed in 1942. And as you'll see, the highway runs right through the heart of the Pueblo, and this creates challenges for pedestrians and bicycle safety. The image on the left shows the same boundary, only with traffic crash points, and this data was given to us by our Jemez Police Department. And we found that 45% of all crashes in the Pueblo occurred along this stretch of road. And adding to the challenge, the speed limit changes 5 times within this boundary, from 50 to 45 to 30, back to 45, and then 50. And the images on the right show how often people walk right along the highway through dirt paths, through arroyos to get to school or tourists visiting. And so given these risks, pedestrian and bicycle safety were identified as a high priority. So what is the solution? As part of our long-range transportation plan and our pedestrian trails and bikeways master plan, we developed the HEMISH Path to Wellness. And so this project would directly address growing concerns around traffic speeds and unsafe crossings and would improve access for all community members. So, putting words to action, construction of our trail began in November 2022, and our goal was to build a 2-mile ADA-compliant multi-use trail along NM4, including two prefab bridges. You can see one in the top left corner, and 2 mid-block crossings. You can see one in the bottom right corner. The cost for this project was approximately $7.2 million and utilized just over 8 grants. So shout out to Sherry, our transportation director. She works tirelessly to get those grants. And then you can see on the bottom left image, that used to be an arroyo that people used to walk through if they could. But now there's a bridge that allows them to cross safely. Some of our residents use the regional transit metro system to commute into the city. So we have added ADA compliant bus stops. You can see in the top right and bottom image. And we included or improved the area with a bench for comfort. And you can see railings along the trail, specifically on the higher, steeper sections of the trail to add safety. And so how is this project sustained? Our JDOT crew, our guys perform routine road maintenance, and we host community cleanups throughout the year. And we're working on implementing an Adopt a Trail program where participants can commit to 1 year caring for a section of the trail with provided tools, a first aid kit, and high visibility gear. So more on that coming soon. This summer, we launched our first ever bike program, giving kids K-6 the chance to ride safely on a trail that didn't exist before. We purchased over 200 bikes from REI, and every child received a free bike and helmet. We took the kids onto the path to practice trail awareness, using their gears, following signage, and even in the bottom left corner, cultural teachings. One of the challenges that did come up was accommodating a taller child that had autism who was still learning how to balance on a bike. So it was all a matter of using program funding to find adult-sized training wheels and allowing him to join the ride safely. The best part about all of this is what we still see today, which is kids riding their bikes along the path after school or on the weekends. And we did just learn that we were awarded a second grant to expand the program to older kids. So that's going to be summer of 2026. This is one of our newest ped safety projects. This was our first quick build ever at the Sheep Springs Circle neighborhood. A lot of families felt unsafe walking due to speeding cars and no marked walkway. So we installed a temporary sidewalk using pavement tape. We added 2 crosswalks, you can see one here, and placed delineators and planters along the edge. You can see in the top right photo, and to separate pedestrians from traffic. And as we were laying tape, you can see in the top left image in the heart, these girls immediately ran outside to ride their scooters in the new path. Radar data did show that speeds decrease after this installation, so what was originally planned as a 2-month project has now been in place for over 7 months. None of this work is possible alone. We all know this. Collaboration has been essential for us. For our bike program and our quick build project, we collaborated tremendously with our internal departments like emergency services, education, public health, police department, tribal administration, and then some external partners like colleges, UNM, University of Montana, that provided helmets and fun merch. With the trail project, it was more collaboration on external partners, funders, contractors, designers, and other organizations. And to wrap up, exercising tribal sovereignty is the foundation of our work. All our projects reflect the priorities and needs of the Pueblo of Jemez. For other communities looking to do this, or something similar, it's really about hosting meetings, offering food or door prizes to encourage participation and really hear your community out, what they need. It's all about having a dedicated team of champions to keep the ball rolling. Lessons learned that could help other communities. Obtaining funding requires persistence, search for every grant opportunity, and use data from one project to strengthen future applications. That's a strategy our director, Sherry, has done successfully. And lastly, visibility is key. My director, she just messaged me. She's in Seattle attending the National Congress of American Indians conference. And she just sent me a statistic being discussed that 63% of social media users rarely or never see Native people in content online, social media, or in TV. And so we're combating this with my background in social media and film. I create posts and videos on socials showcasing our work, tagging funders to keep them engaged. Hey, this is what we're doing with your money. Since starting this effort, our Instagram following grew over 300%, and our Facebook following and engagement increased by 75%. So helping highlight the impact of our projects and lets your community know that they're in good hands. To Michelle Archie for reaching out and the WeCAN Solutions Roundtable for the opportunity to share a little bit about how we're building access and community here in Jemez. I say in the TOA language, Tsekonompa, thank you. And I will be putting my contact info in the comments as well as the socials so you can see what we're up to. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Keeman. Very much appreciated. All right. And then Keeman's going to stay around afterwards, I think, right? For the breakout rooms as well. So awesome. Okay. So our last solution story is complex. There's a video component and then the solution story component because we can't just all do one thing. So I'm going to turn it over to some of the gang or crew or team from the Idaho Access Project. Eric Kingston, I think, is the slide runner. And Carol Barron and Dana Gover are here with us as well. And unfortunately, Jen Grush-Dale couldn't join us today. So I think Eric's going to play Jen in the slide presentation.
Yes, it's pretty tough to take Jen's place. She's way more delightful than I could ever hope to be.
We'll work on
So
it.
see that image on the screen there? And I just want to check and see if Carol was able to join us. I'm hoping she was. She may be masquerading as Katie. I'm not sure. But Carol, if you're online and can unmute, let me know you're here. So once again, I'm with the Idaho Access Project. I was invited to join them in 2019 after the neighborhood access audit I mentioned, and just really grateful that they were able to accommodate me as a TAB, a temporarily abled body. I appreciate that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we do. This opening slide has just some images up in the top left. There's Dana and one of our friends, Lane. We're working on with the city of Boise on a redesign of a downtown business district to make that accessible and safe. Our fellow board member, board president Diana, and her old dog Tegan walking down a trail in the Boise foothills. Another image of a visitable home that you wouldn't notice that it's visitable until you really need to use it. And then in that neighborhood, we looked at our friend Jane and Jeremy and Allison and some other folks, kind of traveling through the neighborhood together. So once again, Dana Gover is here with us. She's ADA consultant in training and technical assistance with the Northwest ADA Center, Idaho. All of us are board members with Idaho Access Project. You know about me, Carol Barron is a blind, low vision rehabilitation expert. She's with the Idaho Access Project board. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and keep moving on. Just a quick overview of what we do. We're an all volunteer board. We don't need money to pay staff or for a building or anything like that. So we're lucky in that respect. So all the money that we raise goes directly to outreach and out-of-pocket costs. But our goal is really to promote access in every aspect of life and every aspect of communities, whether it's where we live, how we engage with one another, how we vote, all that kind of stuff. And it's a journey. We're on this path, and just to try and make things better incrementally. We've had some nice press over time. There's just a shot of Diana with her dog Tegan. We're out hiking in the foothills above Boise. Now, let's see if this works. I don't know if this video is going to work, you guys. Oh, maybe so. Are we ready? Okay.
So ready, one,
Can you hear
two,
it?
three, up. There we go. Our goals for the first Access Idaho Adventure Tour were simple. Enjoy time with friends,
Thank you.
get outside, and explore new places in Idaho.
I'm excited just to be able to bike.
We focused on accessible recreation in North Idaho, and this video is a glimpse into what we discovered.
Here we go.
Phew, I'm gonna have to take my jacket off.
Ready to rock.
We started off riding the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes through a wildlife management area just south of Rose Lake.
Just hearing the nature around me while I'm riding, I don't see anything now, but so all the audible stuff of hearing the wind through the trees and the little bit of the water sound and the birds, it's very peaceful.
Getting to this point wasn't easy.
I'm ready.
We started planning in early 2022, and while local tourism contacts were friendly, they weren't always familiar with accessibility.
You want to turn the other direction?
Despite gaps in access and accommodation, we decided to move forward.
Awesome.
We discovered an amazingly accessible kayak launch at Atlas Park in Coeur d'Alene that gave us all a taste of the Spokane River. We even visited the old Cataldo Mission and found a few new ways to experience it.
And this is all wood, like this. And then with this raised piece right here, this is where my brushed nickel tin candelabra is hanging down from.
Some of us hiked and wheeled up Tubbs Hill, a popular natural area near downtown Coeur d'Alene. The self-appointed Prime Minister of Wallace,
it's almost like summer never stops in Wallace,
led us on a walk and roll tour and gave us a feel for the character and a few of the characters of historic Wallace. And we capped off the day with an amazing dinner at Blackboard Marketplace in downtown Wallace. On our last day, we returned to ride more of the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes, one of the Silver Valley's greatest economic recovery stories. Our group of a dozen travelers had a great time together, and we're just one small example of the 27 million U.S. travelers with disabilities actively seeking out tour operators, lodging, and activities designed to meet their needs. They often travel with friends and family, and they all take note of marketing that speaks to them. We're already thinking ahead to other tours in 2023.
Milwaukee Road, where you get a $7 growler.
And if I need to go, like...
Reach out to us at idahoaccessproject.org with recommendations for accessible recreation and tourism in your region, or connect with us on Instagram. We're at Access Means Business.
Let's see, how do we get out of this? There we go.
So ready, 1, 2.
Okay. All right, so Carol, if you're with us, are you ready? I think Carol's been having some problems getting into this, so I'll go ahead and rush through these.
Dana's though. So I wonder if one of the Danas is Carol.
Oh, yeah, I think one of the this is Dana, the real Dana. Carol,
Ah.
I think you're Dana. Can somebody unmute her? I don't know if she's able to mute or unmute herself.
I can ask her to unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yay!
Yay!
Welcome, Carol. So,
Aw.
Carol, you've got the Recreation Tourism North Idaho slide up.
Okay, this trip to North Idaho was actually a wonderful experience. The director, there's a fabulous director of Parks and Rec up in Coeur d'Alene who really went to bat for people of all abilities in the Coeur d'Alene area. And he's the one that actually went to bat to have a fully accessible kayak launch built at McEwen Park. Or I'm sorry, at Atlas Park at the south end of Lake Coeur d'Alene, and across the river or across the lake is also a fully accessible beach area where people in wheelchairs can actually roll down, leave their chairs, get out, swim, come back, get back into their chairs and navigate that whole area, which to me was very impressive. He went to great lengths in the city parks to make the playgrounds all inclusive, as Jean was talking about in Lincoln City. You know, it took a lot of work and a lot of forethought, but he was able to implement a lot of very helpful things. He also was instrumental in convincing the city council in Coeur d'Alene to fund all these projects. And he said if things had been built that way from the beginning, there wouldn't have been any need to put extra money into redesigning or reworking these things in order to make them more accessible. So here was a man with a good vision for what full inclusion and accessibility means, and he went to bat for it.
And Carol, I'm going to move to the Southern Idaho slides now, or slide now.
Okay. Well, that trip to North Idaho was done in September of 2022. And in September of 2024, we made a trip to the Magic Valley, which is Twin Falls, Jerome, and that south central Idaho area. And while we were there, we went to the Minidoka Historic Monument. Minidoka, for those who may not know, was one of the relocation camps or internment camps for people of Japanese heritage during World War II. And Minidoka housed thousands and thousands of Japanese American citizens during World War II. And they have gone to great lengths to make their monument accessible. They implemented, designed, and built an accessible tactile map of the campgrounds, which I think is in one of the pictures here. And it was really interesting for Diana and I to actually check out where things were in relation to one another. And the staff at the monument were really open to inviting feedback and wanting to know what they might be able to do to make it even more accessible. And this is all part of the U.S. Forest Service, if I'm not mistaken. And
National Park Service.
National Park Service, okay. And they, you know, they have gone to great lengths to make this as accessible and inclusive as possible. And they said that they will continue to work on this, which was very encouraging to us. We also hiked along the trail that follows the Snake River in Twin Falls. And this was a fully accessible trail. It's all paved. You can get to all the lookout spots, no matter what mode of mobility you use. And we also went to, oh, Eric, I'm drawing a blank on this.
Blue Heart Springs.
Blue Heart Springs, which is also located on the Snake River east of Twin Falls. And there was a private company there that offered pontoon boat rides that they did everything they could to make accessible to people of all abilities. You could roll right onto the pontoon boat. They also have a hot springs pool at their facility that they are in, I think they said in the next 2 years, they're planning to make fully accessible so that people in wheelchairs and people using other mobility aids can get in and out of this hot pool or hot tub and swimming pool area. And they did a fabulous job. Their guide was just incredible at describing the environment and telling us about the history and the kind of the geographic changes that the area has been through and what has caused them. And there was one part of the float that we did that maintains the same temperature year round. The temperature of the water never varies. And that's something that we wouldn't have known if someone hadn't been such a skilled guide and explained to us.
That was pretty fun. And Carol, I think we're going to have to keep moving along in the slides. But thank you for describing those.
Sure.
Right. And Dana.
Well, technically speaking, you have 2 minutes left, but we can give you a few
Okay. All
minutes.
right.
Okay, so hi, this is Dana, and I'm a person who uses a wheelchair. So what you're seeing here is who benefits from people being involved, people with disabilities, such as our group. Changes. We've developed partnerships. You can see in some of the pictures, that's me to the left in an electric wheelchair going down the pathway. We're up here in the top picture. We're involved with in a race that we helped incorporate access design. I'm in a picture of a board where there's a sandwich board that blocks my way to the pathway. And then we have Diana down here at the bottom with her guide dog trying to cross the street. People with disabilities vote. And we're for trails for all. That doesn't mean we want everything paved. We just want access for trails. Next slide, Eric. So we have a lot of key partners, and I don't think, talk about that because you guys can see from all the other different presentations, partners are very important to everything that we do. One thing that I can mention though is all of us have a disability, or like Eric says, TAB, training to be disabled. Bring us to the table so you can plan and design with us, not have to go back and make changes after you've done it. Next slide, Eric. So these are some examples of some small things that you can do that doesn't really cost any money. A picture of me at the left. I'm looking down at the rocks, and Eric's dog is looking, going, what the heck? All they had to do was move these barriers, which they did, the boulders, the rocks, so I could access the pathway with everybody else. The pathway in the middle, that's a trailhead. I think it's, what is it, red tail?
Fox.
Yeah, red fox. And there was a sand that was coming down on the hill into the pathway, which if you're in a wheelchair or riding a bike, you would be kind of buried. So they relocated the sand and also made a trail kind of around that. Let's see, there's us at the bottom. Jeremy, who was the main speaker here today. Myself, we're with the mayor, Carol, Eric, Sierra, that was with the ADA coordinator, and we're helping doing work with a redesign of 8th Street. Next project, or next slide, Eric.
Do you want me to do this one?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so a lot of us are part of the Cross Disability Task Force with the City of Boise, which is a really great kind of idea to look at for your own community. If you can get people at the table to share their lived experience, when you're in that planning and design process, it's going to be a lot more economical. And I always say planning ahead is a lot more economical and satisfactory than planning behind. After you pour concrete, it's kind of expensive to change it. You got on the right side in the lower part of it, that's the Idaho Boise Water, or the Boise Watershed Museum exhibit. And, we went out there, we did some consulting with them on accessible features. And those brightly colored codes that you see are Navilens codes. And I encourage you to look that up. I'll put the link to their stuff in the chat. But they're initially designed for people who are blind or low vision as a navigational tool, and they're pretty remarkable. I won't spend too much time on that. Let's see. Okay, how can other communities do this? Again, it all comes back down to, hosting conversations, getting to know people, bringing people to the table to have those discussions about changes to your community that are either needed or, things that you need to do differently. Start small, work together, celebrate your successes. And again, like Jeremy said, you attract more flies with honey. Not that you want flies, but You know, you make friends, right? You can attract more friends that way. How's that? Okay, so
One
just
more
get people
minute.
at the table.
One more minute, Eric.
Yeah. So you kind of get the idea. You know, they're presenting at we had a table at the Boise Regional Realtors out in front of City Hall. Jeremy and I were at you know, with the planning director, talking about including visitability and accessibility in the new design guides for the neighborhoods as part of our modern zoning code. So really incorporating a lot of that. Okay, do you want to talk about this, Dana?
So our project is sustained by, we're all volunteers, as we've discussed before. We develop community partners and support. We do an annual Avenues for Hope campaign where we raise money to hope to provide education and training on inclusive design, visibility for housing. We do some fee for service contracts. All of our funds go to outreach materials and stuff. We do not get paid. We all have other jobs, and our second job is volunteering. And we always try to have solutions. We don't come to the table bitching. We come to the table. We might see a problem, and then we want to work together with other partners. Next.
So these are just examples of those fundraising opportunities that Dana mentioned. Overall community benefit. Do you want that one, Dana?
Go ahead. Just keep
Okay.
going.
Yeah, I mean, basically, just you want to create an authentic community, one that is a whole community that works for everybody. You know, where everybody's included. When we extend our independence, dignity, and productivity, everybody benefits. And for rural communities, one of the things that happens a lot is you get somebody who kind of, as they're aging, they may need other kinds of housing options or something that has some services. And if you don't have that in your own community, they wind up going to a regional center. And they not only take their income with them, but they take their knowledge and their relationship values with them. Who benefits from accessible infrastructure? This is, you know, kind of it in a nutshell. You know, anyone, you know, when you see bike and pedestrian infrastructure, a lot of times we see resistance to that in some places in Idaho. But the bottom line is, you know, when you have that bike and pedestrian infrastructure, everyone benefits from it through increased safety and connectivity. Lessons learned, you got a budget for those anticipated needs. Make sure you include people with disabilities at the table in that conversation real early on. Make sure your communications and expectations are clear. Ask people what they need in terms of communication. Presume competence. When you're not sure what somebody needs, ask them. And people want meaningful engagement, not engagement theater.